British line has moved up there 1 inch and reloaded. So the next step is that we go back to the bag and draw some more chit. So we'll go down to the bag and we will draw some more chits. So just jumble them all up and see what we get out. It is a red flag, so the British now have 2 red flags, and draw another chit, and it's the tiffin. So the British have 2 flags and tiffin is out. Well, what that means is the British can do something with units which haven't activated, but because of the way that we're doing this, I'll have to let the British decide whether they want to use the flags before the tiffin came out or after the tiffin came out. There's no way around that with the way the system is over the internet. So we'll leave it there. So that the British can decide what they're doing and when they're doing it. The British have decided to play sharp practice. Now they've moved up and they're going to use their 2 flag tokens to go into sharp practice. Because they've moved, they're no longer firing controlled volleys, so this will be an uncontrolled volley. Now they have on each group within the formation 1 point of shock, but because the shock is only counted on each individual group, each group hasn't got enough to affect their firing, so they're going to be firing full. So that's 22 dice, it's long range, and they're needing 6s to hit. So long range on 22 dice is 6s to hit. Whoops, I've just dropped a dice. There's a lot of dice in my hand. So let's see. Let's move the camera down to the dice tray and see what we get. So 22 dice hitting on 6s. I'm not going to like this. There's 1. There's 2. There's 3, and that is it. 3 hits, 22 dice, 3 hits. Not very good at all. So we'll go and see what the outcome is. So 3 hits. They now need to roll for kills or shock. So the French are in light cover, which means they'll need 6s to kill, 4s to 5s for shock. Anything below that is a miss. So here we go. And they have 1 kill and 1 shock. So the British on 22 dice have done 1 kill and 1 shock. So I'll put those on. The tokens will all go back into the bag because the tiffin has come out, apart from obviously the French unit which was destroyed. So a nice bit of firing, which I think the French actually got away with. So we'll finish there. Okay, bit of controversy, or not. It seems that the British want to claim controlled volleys because that's what they've been firing before, and sharp practice is 2 actions. They were already loaded, so in fact when I rolled the 22 dice, because sharp practice gives you a +1 to your dice roll, 5s and 6s would have hit. So instead of the 3 hits, they actually had 5. So I'm now going to roll those to see what those hits do. Again, they're still needing 5s and 6s, 5 for shock, 6 for a kill. So here we go. Well, I did say in my comments on Facebook to the British commanders this could be quite important, and with 1 kill and 1 shock, more shock going on, I think that says it all. So I will put those on, but what we will do in the meantime is carry on with the draw. So all the chips are back in the bag, apart from, of course, the French number 2, because that unit was destroyed. So the first out of the bag is a red flag, and we'll carry on. Second out of the bag is blue unit 1, blue officer 1, which is the officer commanding the French line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the casualties onto those. I've got to roll for a casualty for the officer because there's now 2 dead. So with it being a line that's firing, it needs to be below the amount of dead. So if it's a 1, the officer has been hit. No, so nothing on the officer. So we just carry on as we are, just putting on 1 more dead and another point of shock onto the French unit before the French officer is activated. Okay. French officer number 1, who is attached to the French line infantry, has been drawn. He's going to activate the French line. Now, both units which make up the French line formation have 3 points of shock. That means that they are going to lose 2 dice on their roll, I believe. We may get into a discussion about this on the Facebook page with the others in the group, but my interpretation is it's per group. So with each group having 3 on each, they'll only lose 1 dice. So they're going to fire at the British line, but obviously they need 2 activations because they've got to reload first and then fire. So with that, I am also going to have the officer point out the firing, which will then also give them extra dice. It gives them each status level of the leader, so he's status 2 leaders, so that will give them 2 extra dice, 1 for each level. So they start on 12 dice because there's 12 men altogether, 2 lots of 6s, but they lose 2 for the shock, but the officer will then add 2, so that takes it back up to 12. So they're going to reload and they're going to fire. They're firing at long range, so they need 6s to hit. So let's go down to the dice tray. So 12 dice, 6s to hit, and see how we do. Now the last time I rolled for these, they missed totally. Okay, well that's a little bit better. So they've actually got 3 hits within that. So there we go. So 3 hits out of 12. So I think we would say. So now to see whether they get shock or a kill. So they are going to be firing at the line in the open. They need a 6 to kill, 3 to 5s for shock. So here we go. and they've got 1 kill and 2 more shock to go on to the British. So I will leave it there because the British need to decide where they're going to put the shock, but they are definitely going to go down a man. I'll also let them decide which unit they want to take the man off. I don't need to roll for the officer casualty because I'd have to roll under a 1, and well, as you know, that's not going to happen. So we'll leave it there. So the French have fired. I would like to say the British line has been hammered, but that's not the case. The French managed to kill 1 of the British, but put 2 points of shock on. So for the players on the Facebook, I have taken a man from this unit, so they are now down to 7. Shock's gone on there as well, and a shock's gone on there, so the shock is 2, 2, 1 on that British unit. So not a disaster for the French, but perhaps could have done with a bit more luck on the dice. Anyway, we'll get down to the next draw of the chits to see who is going next. So I'll just zoom out a little bit. We're on the dice tray, and I've got the bag, and we will mix it up and draw one out, and it is a British red flag. So the British now have 2 red flags, so they could do a sharp practice or something else. Let's pull out another one. Okay, so let's see, and it's another British red flag. So they've now got 3 red flags out, so we'll draw another. I mean, obviously I've got to let the British decide what they want to do. So if this is a number of a unit, the British can decide what they want to do with the flags first, and then we'll activate on the number. And so here we go, and this is a blue flag. Wow, there we go, we've had 3 flags in a row. That means a random event, so let's get on with that. We will get our rulebook, and now the random event is obviously a firing one, a shooter, because that's what the last action was, and that was on the French. So 2d6. Okay, we'll roll 2d6, and it's a 3. So on a 3, fouled barrels. The unit has fouled barrels. They fire with a -1 to hit until their weapons can be cleaned with water. If in contact with water, take 1 full turn to clean the barrels. Well, that could be a problem, as there's no water, but there's a possibility that there might be spirits in the barrels. So I would think that the French could clean their barrels with alcohol. Mon Dieu. So if the French advance and get to the barrels, I think it takes a turn to do an action, but I'll have to read that up. So they could clear their guns. Otherwise, they're firing on a -1 for the rest of the game. And we'll leave it there. No, we'll go back to a draw because we still haven't got a unit activated. So we'll draw another one and see what comes out. And the next one out is, there you go, British unit number 3. And British unit 3 is, well, officer number 3 is the officer commanding the Rangers and the rifles, which is, I'll show you on the camera. So the Rangers and the rifles, which are over there. So that is Officer 3 just behind the rifles. Zoom in. Sorry, zoom in. Let's go the right way. And there he is. Okay, so I think that the Rangers are probably out of his command range, so the only unit he would be able to command would be the rifles. So that's where we'll leave it, and I'll post this for the guys who are playing. Thank you. Okay, in the last video I shot, we drew out the Officer number 3 chit for the British. I wrongly identified the officer which we're looking at now as number 3. He's actually number 2. Number 3 is actually all the way over here with the native contingent for the British. So there's officer number 3. So he's the one that's activated. The British have decided that they will activate the Native Americans, and they will use the 3 flags which had been drawn out for them to take off shock. So the Native Americans at the moment have got 5 points of shock on, so they'll take 3 points of shock off, which will reduce their shock to 2. They are then going to move and try to capture the deployment point to the left of where they are now, which is just behind the blockhouse. So we're going to do that then. So take off the 3 shock, so they're down to 2, which will mean that they will lose 2 points of movement. I believe 1 point of movement per shock. So they will move. They will lose 2 inches of movement altogether. Now they're going to move. So they've got 2 activations. So I'm going to roll for the first activation. So we'll come down to the dice tray. Like so. Let's take out that. So first activation will give them 4, but they'll lose 2. So that goes down to 2. Which won't be enough for to get to the point, so they'll move again, but they won't lose any for shock this time, and they roll a 1. So in fact they don't actually reach. They only manage to move 3 inches, and the deployment point is actually 4 inches away. So not good rolling there. They'll tell me I should have rolled the white dice instead of the orange. So I'm going to sort that out, but in the meantime I will also do a next draw. So here we go, and the next draw is a blue flag. So the French have two flags out now. That might be worth a sharp practice for me. I'll have to think about that. If I do, I will. I think I will use that for sharp practice and get another round of firing in on the British line, or I can reload the French riflemen. So I'll have to think about that one. But the next one out will be British officer number 1, and British officer number 1, and I will rightly identify that this time, is actually the British line. So I think I will use sharp practice to reload and fire the French, who are firing uncontrolled volleys, and then we'll have to see what the British want to do. So I will move the troops, and then we'll come back to film the firing and its results. The French have performed sharp practice on their riflemen, so they reloaded and are ready to fire. The British, their officer number 1 was drawn, and so with his initiative points, he's taken 1 point of shock off the British line. So now it runs from left to right. The British have 2 shock, 1 and 1. Okay, so that's 4 shock along the line altogether. And rather than go to uncontrolled fire, they've decided that they will load and present. Hence the little red markers in front of the British line showing that they are presented. So now we will go down to the dice tray, and we will draw the next chit or 2 depending on what happens. So at the moment we've had 3 flags out for the British, 2 for the French. French unit 1 and British unit 1 and 3. So let's see what comes out next. And the next chit out is unit number 3, officer number 3 for the French, and that is the officer commanding the rifles over there. Okay, so that's the rifles. They've just reloaded with sharp practice, and it's definitely officer number 3 over there. So we will finish this video here while I consider what I'm going to do, and off we jolly well go. Right, so the French Courrier de Bois are going to be activated by their leader, who is French leader number 3, and what I'm going to do with them is I'm going to move them towards the back edge of the table, past the windmill. If I can get enough movement without using all my activations, I will then fire at the Indians if they're in range. I've got a feeling I'm going to need all my activations plus the extra dice for them being light troops to get into position for the next turn. So just come out a bit and have a look. So they're going to move from there up to just the other side of the windmill, which would then hopefully put them in sight of the native contingent of the British forces. So we'll go down to the dice tray and we'll roll. So I'm going to roll the 2 dice to start with, so that will be the first activation plus the free movement dice for this turn, and see how many inches I've got. So here we go, and that gives me 7, which is definitely not enough to get to where I want, so I will use the last activation. So 8 inches altogether. Not a good movement for me, but hey ho, that's what it is. So I will do that movement, and then we'll come back for the next draw, out of the bag. So the French have moved and going under the ladders. Let's hope they're not superstitious and it'll bring them bad luck. So we'll see what happens there. As you can see, that's where they are, and we'll just pan around. That's where the Indians are. So we'll now go down to the tray for the next draw of a chit, and this will either be a British unit or another flag chit, or it could be the Tiffin. Tiffin would be good for me, maybe. Here we go. And it is a red flag, so that's one flag out. It's good for the Brits. And the next one out is a blue flag. It's 2 flags out. If another flag comes out, and we've only got 3 tokens left, that'll be a moving violation. Random event. Not COVID. Not COVID. And here we go. Well, British officer number 2. So I'll get this right this time. British officer number 2 is him. So there we go. He's in charge of the frontier militia and the Rangers who are in behind that tree there. So we'll pass it over to the British and see what they want to do. Okay, the British have decided to tap reload the musket, the rifles, when they're activated by Officer 2. That means that instead of firing as rifles, they're going to fire as muskets, and they're going to fire at the French line unit. Sorry, there. It will be a flank shot. They are firing from cover because they're just in the tree line, so they get a +1 to their dice, so they'll be hitting on 5s and 6s on 6 dice. 5s and 6s on 6 dice for hits. Now I will explain what happens with the flank shot later, if there is any explaining to do. So 6 dice on 5s and 6s. Here we go. And I'm rolling the white dice because they don't like the red, orange. And we have 4 hits. Well, that's good. 4 hits for the British. Okay, so now we have to work out. So they're going to roll 4 dice. 6s are kills. 4s to 5s are 4 to 5s are shock. And this is where the flank comes into it, because hitting in the flank, it will double any shock. So the French unit which they're going to fire and hit, which is the one that closest to them, has already got 3 shock on it. So they're hoping for at least 2 shock, which will then double up to 4. And we have 1 kill and 1 shock. No shock, sorry. 1 kill, no shock. So we just lose another man from the French unit, which will put them down to 5 men. Oh, there they are. Oh, sorry, that's the British. And the French are over here in the smoke. So the smoke has put the rifles off a little bit, and the fast reload, so the French lose one man, and that will be it. So not as good a result, I think, as the British would have hoped for, but still is knocking men off, and they don't need much more to get these units probably going backwards, but we will wait and see.